The MAHOUT by Clark Ashton Smith, among his earliest stories, originally published 1911. Read by Darrell T. Smith II for my channel, Quasar Spectra. Arthur Merton, British resident at Jizapur, and his cousin John Hawley, an Agra newspaper editor who had run down into central India for a few weeks shooting at Merton's invitation, reined in their horses just outside the gates of Jizapur. The Maharaja's elephants, a score of the largest and finest tuskers in central India, were being ridden out for their daily exercise. The procession was led by Raja, the great elephant of state, who towered above the rest like a warship amongst merchantmen. He was a magnificent elephant, over 12 feet from his shoulders to the ground, and of a slightly lighter hue than the others, who were of the usual muddy gray. On the ends of his tusks gleamed golden knobs. "What a kingly animal!" exclaimed Hawley as Raja passed. As he spoke, the MAHOUT, or driver, who had been sitting his charge like a bronze image, turned and met Hawley's eyes. He was a man to attract attention, this MAHOUT, as distinctive a figure among his brother MAHOUTs as was Raja among the elephants. He was apparently very tall and of a high caste type, the eyes proud and fearless, the heavy beard carefully trimmed, and the face cast in a handsome, dignified mold. Hawley gave a second exclamation as he met the MAHOUT's gaze and stared at the man hard. The Hindu, after an impressive glance, turned his head, and the elephant went on. "I could swear that I have seen that man before," said Hawley at his cousin's interrogatory expression. "It was near Agra about 6 years ago, when I was out riding one afternoon. My horse, a nervous, high-strung wailer, bolted at the sight of an umbrella which someone had left by the roadside. It was impossible to stop him. Indeed, I had all I could to keep on. Suddenly the Hindu we have just passed, or his double, stepped out into the road and grabbed the bridle. He was carried quite a distance, but managed to keep his grip, and the wailer finally condescended to stop. After receiving my thanks with a dignified depredation of the service he had done me, the Hindu disappeared, and I have not seen him since." "It is scarcely probable, though, that this MAHOUT is the same," Hawley resumed after a pause. "My rescuer was dressed as a high caste, and it is not conceivable that such a one would turn elephant driver." "I know nothing of the man," said Merton as they rode on into the city. "He has been Raja's MAHOUT ever since I came here a year ago. Of course, as you say, he cannot be the man who stopped your horse. It is merely a chance resemblance." The next afternoon, Hawley was out riding alone. He had left the main road for a smaller one running into the jungle, intending to visit a ruined temple of which Merton had told him. Suddenly he noticed elephant tracks in the dust, exceedingly large ones, which he concluded could have been made only by Raja. A momentary curiosity as to why the elephant had been ridden off into the jungle, and also concerning the MAHOUT, led Hawley to follow the tracks when the road branched and they took the path opposite to the one that he had intended to follow. In a few minutes he came to a spot of open ground in the thick, luxuriant jungle and reined in quickly at what he saw there. Raja stood in the clearing, holding something in his trunk, which Hawley at first glance took to be a man, dressed in a blue and gold native attire and with a red turban. Another look told him that it was merely a dummy, some old clothes stuffed with straw. As he watched, the MAHOUT gave a low command, reinforced with a jab behind the ear from his ankus or goad. Raja gave an upward swing with his trunk and released his hold on the figure, which flew skyward for at least 20 feet and then dropped limply to earth. The mahout watched its fall with an expression of what seemed to be malevolence upon his face, though Hawley might have been mistaken as to this at the distance. He gave another command, and a jab at the elephant's cheek, a peculiar quick thrust, at which Raja picked the dummy up and placed it on his back behind the mahout in the place usually occupied by the howdah. The Hindu directing, the figure was again seized and hurled into the air. Much mystified, Hawley watched several repetitions of this strange performance, but was unable to puzzle out what it meant. Finally, the mahout caught sight of him and rode the elephant hastily away into the jungle on the opposite side of the clearing. Evidently, he did not wish to be observed or questioned. Hawley continued his journey to the temple, thinking over the curious incident as he went. He did not see the mahout again that day. He spoke of what he had seen to Merton that evening, but his cousin paid little attention to the tale, saying that no one could comprehend anything done by natives, and that it wasn't worthwhile to wonder at their actions anyway. Even if one could find the explanation, it wouldn't be worth knowing. The scene in the jungle recurred to Hawley many times, probably because of the resemblance of the mahout to the man who had stopped his horse at Agra. But he could think of no plausible explanation of what he had seen. At last he dismissed the matter from his mind altogether. At the time of Hawley's visit, great preparations were being made for the marriage of the Maharaja of Jizapur, Krishna Singh, to the daughter of the neighboring sovereign. There was to be much feasting, firing of guns, and a gorgeous procession. All the Rajabs, Ranas, and Thakurs, etc., for a radius of at least 100 miles, were to be present. The spectacle, indeed, was one of the inducements that had drawn Hawley down into central India. After 2 weeks of unprecedented activity and excitement in the city of Jizapur, the great day came with incessant thunder of guns from the Maharaja's palace during all the forenoon, as the royalty of central India arrived with its hordes of picturesque, tattered, dirty retainers and soldiery. Each king or dignitary was punctiliously saluted according to his rank, which in India is determined by the number of guns that may be fired in his honor. At noon, a great procession, the Maharaja heading it, issued from the palace to ride out and meet the bride and her father and attendants, who were to reach Jizapur at that hour. Hawley and Merton watched the pageant from the large and many-colored crowd that lined the roadside without the city gates. As Raja, the great state elephant, emerged, with Krishna Singh in the gold-embroidered howdah or canopied seat on his back, a rising cloud of dust in the distance proclaimed the coming of the bride and her relatives. Behind the Maharaja came a number of elephants bearing the nobles and dignitaries of Jizapur and the neighboring princes. Then emerged richly caparisoned horses with prismatically attired riders, soldiers, and attendants. Over this great glare of color and movement was the almost intolerable light of the midday eastern sun. The 2 Englishmen were some distance from the city gates, so that when the Maharaja's slow, majestic procession passed them, that of the bridge was drawing near, a similar one and less gorgeous only because it was smaller. Perhaps 50 yards separated the two when something happened to bring both processions to a halt. Hawley, who happened at the moment to be idly watching the elephant Raja, and his driver saw the mahout reach swiftly forward and stab the animal's cheek with his goad, precisely as he had done on that day in the jungle when Hawley had come unexpectedly upon him. Probably no one else noticed the action, or, if they did, attached any importance to it in the excitement that followed. As he reached with his trunk for the dummy seated on his back, so Raja reached into the howdah and grasped Krishna Singh about the waist. In an instant, the astonished, terror-stricken Maharaja was dancing in midair where the elephant held him poised for a moment. Then, in spite of the shouts, commands, and blows of his mahout, Raja began to swing Krishna Singh to and fro, slowly at first, but with a gradually increasing speed. It was like watching a gigantic pendulum. The fascinated crowd gazed in a sudden and tense silence for what seemed to them hours, though they were really only seconds, before the elephant, with the last vicious upward impetus of his helpless victim, re-eased his hold. Krishna Singh soared skyward, a blot of gold and red against the intense, stark, blazing azure of the Indian sky. To the horror-stricken onlookers, he seemed to hang there for hours before he began to fall back from the height to which the giant elephant had tossed him, as one would toss a tennis ball. Holly turned away, unable to look any longer, and in an instant heard the hollow, lifeless thud as the body struck the ground. The sound broke the spell of horror and amazement that had held the crowd, and a confused babble arose, interspersed with a few wails and cries. One sharp shriek came from the curtained howdah of the bride. The Maharaji's bodyguard at once galloped forward and formed a ring about the body. The crowd, to whom the elephant had gone must, or mad, began to retreat and disperse. Holly, in a few words, told his cousin of what he had seen the mahout do, and his belief that the elephant's action had thus been incited. The two Englishmen went to the captain of the bodyguard, who was standing by the side of the fallen Maharaja. Krishna Singh lay quite dead, his neck broken by the fall. The captain, upon being informed of what Holly had seen, directed some of his men to go in search of the mahout, who, in the confusion, had slipped from Raja's neck, disappearing no one knew where. Their search was unsuccessful, nor did a further one, continued for over a week, reveal any trace of the elephant driver. But several days afterward, Holly received a letter bearing the Agra postmark. It was in a hand unfamiliar to him, and was written in rather stiff, though perfectly correct English, such as an educated native would write. It was as follows: To Holly Sahib, I am the man who stopped the Sahib's horse near Agra one day 6 years ago. Because I have seen in the Sahib's eyes that he recognized and remembers me, I am writing this. He will then understand much that has puzzled him. My father was Krishna Singh's half-brother. Men who bore my father an enmity invented evidence of a plot on his part to murder Krishna Singh and seize the throne. The Maharaja, bearing him little love and being of an intensely suspicious nature, required little proof to believe this, and caused my father and several others of the family to be seized and thrown into the palace dungeons. A few days later, without trial, they were led out and executed by the death of the elephant. Perchance the Sahib has not heard of this. The manner of it is thus. The condemned man is made to kneel with his head on a block of stone, and an elephant, at a command from the driver, places one of his feet on the prisoner's head, killing him, of course, instantly. I, who was but a youth at the time, by some inadvertence, was allowed to escape and made my way to Agra, where I remained several years with distant relatives, learning in that time to speak and write English. I was intending to enter the service of the British Raj when an idea of revenge on Krishna Singh for my father's death suddenly sprang into full conception. I had long plotted, forming many impracticable and futile plans for vengeance, but the one that then occurred to me seemed possible, though extremely difficult. As the Sahib has seen, it proved successful. I at once left Agra, disguising myself as a low caste, and went to Burma, where I learned elephant driving, a work not easy for one who has not been trained to it from boyhood. In doing this, I sacrificed my caste. In my thirst for revenge, however, it seemed but a little thing. After 4 years in the jungle, I came to Jizapur and, being a skilled and fully accredited Mahout, was given a position in the Maharaja's stables. Krishna Singh never suspected my identity, for I had changed greatly in the 10 years since I had fled from Jizapur, and who would have thought to find Kshatriya in the position of such a low-caste elephant driver? Gradually, for my skill and trustworthiness, I was advanced in position, and at last was entrusted with the state elephant Raja. This was what I had long been aiming at, for on my attaining the care of Krishna Singh's own elephant depended the success or failure of my plan. This position obtained, my purpose was but half achieved. It was necessary that the elephant be trained for his part, and this, indeed, was perhaps the most difficult and dangerous part of my work. It was not easy to avoid observation, and detection was likely to prove fatal to me and to my plan. On that day when the Sahib came upon me in the jungle, I thought my scheme doomed and prepared to flee. But evidently no idea of the meaning of the performance in the jungle entered the Sahib's mind. At last came my day of revenge, and after the Maharaja's death, I succeeded in miraculously escaping, though I had fully expected to pay for my vengeance with my own life. I am safe now. Not all the police and secret emissaries in India can find me. The death that my father met has been visited upon his murderer, and the shadow of those dreadful days and of that unavenged crime has at last been lifted from my heart. I go forth content to face life and fate calmly, and with a mind free and untroubled. You've been listening to pre-1990s speculative fiction readings with a highlight on science fiction by Darrell T. Smith II. Please consider clicking the donation link in the description box. Thank you so much for your time and your imagination.